Most people think building wealth is about working harder, saving more, or getting lucky. But what if the real key is knowing what the ultra wealthy know and doing what they do, not what they say? What if you could cut your risk by 80% and still multiply your wealth faster than ever before? Today, we're opening the vault. Welcome to the holy grail of investing. Tony, if you can find 8 to 12 uncorrelated investments. Peter sold the local rights for $7 billion. So if you could compound 50% faster. People don't understand what that means. You could be a good businessman but not a great investor. You talk about a concept called pitching cash. I've never thought about it that way, but tell us what you did for Ray Dalio. Well, no. When I wrote this book, Money, Master the Game, I wrote it because in 2008, as you remember, the world was melting down, but I was coaching Paul Tudor Jones at the time, one of the top 10 traders in the history of the world. This is a guy who in 1987, when the stock market dropped 20% in one day, the largest percentage drop in a day, he made 100% for his clients. Genius. So when this was all happening, I couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe afterwards nothing was done, and that the punishment for the people who almost destroyed the financial system was to give them more money. I don't have a lot of skills, but one skill I have is the ability to get to the best people. And I'm good at modeling, so I said, let me interview the very best, in preparation for those, like Ray Dalio, one of the greatest hedge fund traders in the history of the world. I prepared for him, I think 3.5, 4 hours the night before. I had prepared weeks before, but I went even deeper. I knew every part of what was going on, so I went in typical supposed to be a 45-minute interview, and it went 3 hours. Same thing happened with Jack Bogle. Jack Bogle actually wrote a quote that says, Tony Robbins came by for a 20-minute interview, and 3.5 hours later, it was the most piercing interview of my entire career. He'd say something, I knew what it was, and I could add some value back and forth. It's what I call pitch and catch. It built a great rapport, and we're good friends today because of it. But one of the questions I asked him at the time was, what is the single most important investment principle of all the things you've learned that people should know? And he said, Tony, that's a great question. I struggled with this for years, and I finally came up with what I call the holy grail of investing. He said, Tony, if you can find 8 to 12 uncorrelated investments, you reduce your risk by 80%, and you increase your upside. That's wild. Now that sounds wonderful on paper, but when you go to do it, it's something else. Then I was at the JP Morgan conference, where you gotta be a billionaire to go. And I'm one of the speakers. Ray's right before me. Somebody asked him a similar question, what's most important to him, and he said the Holy Grail, same thing, and every head in the room, which hadn't written a single note the entire day, dropped down and wrote it. So then I realized even sophisticated people miss this one. They may know it intellectually, but they don't apply it. So how do you do that? Like it's hard, because you say, okay, stocks and bonds aren't correlated. Usually stocks are going up, bonds are at a different price point. That's usually the balance, but during tough times they get aligned. Then I started studying history and saying, okay, your asset allocation, where you put your money at risks, small risk, larger risk, upsides, etc. So I said, well, what is the asset allocation for the most successful people in the world? Well, ultra wealthy people have 46% of their assets in private equity. Yeah, but that's hard to get into. Then I started doing the homework, and I found, in the last 37 years, there isn't a single stock market in the world that has beaten average private equity. Here's the real numbers. The S&P 500, that most people would invest in the index, has gone up 7% over the last 37 years. It's pretty amazing compounding. The average private equity, not the best guys, just the average has been 7%. So if you could compound 50% faster, people don't understand what that means. If you put $1 million in the S&P 37 years ago and never touched it, it's worth $42 million today. If you put $1 million the same day in private equity, average private equity, it's worth $223 million. So then, how does the average person get that? There are things like accredited investor status. The government doesn't give you access to all these investments. The best investments are reserved for people who already have money. It seems so unjust and unfair. I was squawking about it. I didn't do it, but somebody woke up in Congress. And last year, that's why I wrote the book. They came out with a new rule. Senate's got to confirm it this year. But the new rule is, well, you could get a lot of money by inheriting it. That doesn't mean you're a sophisticated investor. You could be a good businessman but not a great investor. So why would we penalize people? Say if they have a certain amount of money, let's give them a test to take. They can study for it. If they understand it, then anyone can have access to this. So imagine the compounding value to your financial future when you can do this. I was talking to this guy who was one of Paul Tudor Jones's associate partners before. He broke off and started his own company. I had helped him really grow his business quite a bit. And I was saying to him, you know, private equity is great. And because of guys like you and me, we have certain relationships and brand, and so we get access to some of the best. But the amount you get, they're all sold out right away. It's so small that it wasn't going to alter my life in any way. So I was like, man, how did you get in there? The very best is already sold out. And he goes, Tony, you've helped me so much. I gotta tell you where I put most of my money. I said, where? He goes, there's this company in Houston, Texas. And I went, Houston, not Singapore, London, New York, Connecticut, Houston. He goes, yeah, they're off the beaten path, but they are brilliant. Here's what they've done. When you try to invest in private equity, you become what's called a limited partner. And as you know, you give them your money and then they charge you 2% of your money, whether they make you money or not, and then they get 20% of the upside. People are willing to do it because they're so successful. But it makes them very wealthy. If you look at the Forbes 400, you'll see which industry has the most billionaires. People think it's tech, it's not. They think it's real estate, it's not. They think it's entertainment, it's not. It's financial services, and it's specifically not hedge funds that go up and down. It's private equity. So I look at this and I'm like, okay, these guys are the masters of the universe and they're getting 2 and 20. He goes, Tony, they have a way for you not to try to get into a fund, but to own the firm. So think about it. Rather than betting on a horse, you own the racetrack. I'm like, you can do that. Some of the best companies in the world, $100 billion funds that have produced incredible results. So I went and became a client, and it turned out the founder of that company 20 years before was a student of mine. Like you, changed his whole life, and he's like, Tony, how do I get you involved? I said, I want to get involved. So I invested in the company. Then I wrote the book to let people know all these opportunities are available. Like sports teams, if you want an asset that's not correlated, sports teams have done well in every market and every environment we've ever seen, and they do better than the S&P. So I worked for a lifetime. You see those 5 rings back there. Those are all championship rings from different sports where I worked with a team, and some of them I now own or own a piece of, the Dodgers, a piece of the Golden State Warriors. It's the most fun experience you can imagine. It's something you really enjoy, but also the returns, on average across all those sports, are 14% compounded, not 10. 7%, and you own a monopoly. You own a business that's a legal monopoly, and who are your customers? Fans that comes from fanatics, and they're multi-generational, and now they're not just sports teams, the entertainment value. I'll just give you one example, the Dodgers. My friend Peter Guber bought the Dodgers. He paid $2 billion for the Dodgers, $2. $1 billion, I think it was, and everybody on the news was saying, no one's paid over $1 billion, this is insane. So I said, Peter, I know every nut job in the world. You're not nuts, you're all slide. Biscuit guys, what do you know, what are you going to do here? He said, wait 3 days, I want to make the announcement. Then call me and we'll come over and celebrate. 3 days later, he announces, if you own a sports team NBA, like there are 32 teams if I remember correctly, you get 1/32 of all the media coverage that's done nationally and internationally. It's huge. And the NFL, which was holding out, just made a deal. Without doing anything with the NFL, they get a check for $450 million at the end of every year, just for their percentage of the league, just that. But you get to keep your local rights. Peter sold the local rights for $7 billion and made $5 billion in profit. You don't need to be born into money, have an Ivy League degree, or rub shoulders with billionaires to build lasting wealth. You need one thing, access to the right knowledge. The game is changing, and now the doors that were once locked are cracking open. So here's your choice. Stand by and watch others compound their futures, or step up, get informed, and take your seat at the table. This isn't just about money. It's about freedom, legacy, and owning your financial destiny. Now ask yourself, what will you do today that your future self will thank you for?